Welcome to the deep dive. Come on in, get comfortable.
Glad to be here.
Whether you are driving your car, walking the dog, or maybe just staring at the ceiling, avoiding whatever it is you are supposed to be doing today, I am glad you carved out this time.
Yeah, it's an important topic today.
The mission for this session is profound. We have a fascinating stack of sources sitting right in front of us, and these materials sit squarely at the intersection of some seemingly very different worlds.
Completely different paradigms, really.
Exactly. We are talking about the bleeding edge of quantum physics, the deep foundational trenches of developmental psychology, and the kind of ancient mystical traditions that have survived for centuries.
Which is a wild combination to look at all at once.
Right. And the goal today is to take all of these dense, complex materials and distill them down into the actual mechanics of how our deeply held beliefs shape our physical reality.
It is a remarkable collection of information. And what is so striking to me as I review these sources is how these completely different disciplines, science, psychology, and ancient spirituality, are essentially pointing to the exact same underlying truth about human existence.
Just using completely different words.
I just use slightly different vocabularies to describe it, yeah. Our objective isn't just to throw around scientific buzzwords or philosophical theories, but to rigorously understand the tangible mechanics of this process.
The actual gears turning behind the scenes.
Exactly. We are going to look at how internal assumptions collapse the infinite swirling possibilities of the universe into the rigid physical reality you experience every single day.
I want to drop a thought right here at the top, just to set the hook for you, the listener. I want you to really consider this.
It's a heavy question.
What if the exact reason you feel stuck right now, maybe it is a plateau in your career, maybe it is a frustrating, endlessly repeating dynamic in your romantic relationships, or just this chronic, low-level feeling of exhaustion? What if none of that is due to bad luck?
What if it's not random at all?
Right. What if it has absolutely nothing to do with the economy or the city you live in or the people around you? What if the sole reason you are experiencing these specific roadblocks is because of a very particular invisible filter that was permanently installed in your brain before you were even 7 years old?
That is the core premise we are going to explore today. We are looking at how deeply held, often completely subconscious beliefs literally operate as a force of nature.
And before we get going, I do want to establish our parameters for this deep dive. As we go through these concepts, we are going to be exploring them entirely anonymously.
Which is crucial for this kind of work.
It really is. We are focusing purely on the universal truths contained within these texts, without citing specific names, authors, or institutions.
Taking the ego out of the equation entirely.
By stripping away the labels, we remove any preconceived biases. It allows us to just look at the raw data, the pure concepts, and see how they apply directly to the mechanics of your life.
It keeps the focus exactly where it should be, on the practical application of the knowledge and the structural realities of human consciousness.
So let's start with the immediate context these materials provide. The sources spend a significant amount of time highlighting the current era we are entering.
A very specific timeline.
Yeah. Specifically, they point to the year 2026 as a pivotal time for human transformation. The text frames this not just as another year on the calendar, but as a period of collective awakening.
A shift in the baseline frequency of society.
There is this sense that humanity as a whole is hitting a critical mass of awareness, and it ties this broader timeline to specific instances of cosmic timing.
The convergence they mention is fascinating.
It mentions a unique convergence, a period marked by a powerful full moon overlapping with a profound night that ancient traditions have long dedicated to spiritual forgiveness, the clearing of debts, and the release of heavy emotional burdens.
Which sounds incredibly mystical on the surface.
Right, and I have to play the skeptic for a second. Why are humans so drawn to these cosmic milestones? It is easy to dismiss this as mere astrology or magical thinking. What is the actual mechanical draw here?
It is a fair question, and we have to look past the superficial interpretations of astrology to understand the deeper mechanics at play.
Because there's a biological reality to it.
There's a deeply ingrained human instinct to look to the cosmos, but there is also a very real energetic and biological component to it. Let's examine the full moon, which the text highlights specifically.
Okay.
On a purely physical level, we know the moon's gravitational pull affects the tides of the oceans.
That's just basic middle school science.
Exactly. Given that the human body is largely composed of water, it is not an enormous leap of logic to suggest that lunar cycles exert a subtle but profound pull on our internal biology.
On our actual cells.
Yes, our circadian rhythms and subsequently our emotional state.
So you are saying it is an environmental trigger, much like seasonal affective disorder, but on a different frequency.
Precisely. But beyond the sheer biology, the full moon acts as an energetic amplifier.
How so?
Think of it structurally. Throughout a standard month, we can easily mask our anxieties, our resentments, and our fears in the shadows of our daily routines.
We just bury ourselves in emails and errands.
We stay busy, we distract ourselves with screens and obligations. But during a full moon, both symbolically and energetically, the baseline frequency of the environment shifts.
It turns the volume up.
It acts as a catalyst that forces deeply buried emotional weights to the surface. When you combine that lunar amplification with a historical, collective tradition focused entirely on spiritual forgiveness and unburdening, you get a massive forcing function for change.
Like a pressure cooker.
The environment is essentially stripping away the distractions and demanding that you look at the psychological baggage you were carrying.
Okay, let's unpack this. This concept of the environment demanding our attention leads perfectly into how this energy practically manifests in daily life.
It's not a subtle process once it starts.
No, not at all. The materials use a very evocative concept here. They describe a phenomenon where, when we hold on to emotional baggage that no longer serves us, when we refuse to drop the heavy bags we've been carrying for years, the universe squeezes us.
The squeeze is a highly accurate description of allostatic load reaching its breaking point.
And the sources provide some incredibly relatable examples of what this squeezing feels like. I was reading this and immediately thought of a friend of mine.
We all know someone going through this.
It is that feeling of being absolutely trapped in a job. You wake up on a Tuesday, the alarm goes off, and you feel this literal weight on your chest.
The physical dread.
You have the golden handcuffs, the salary is good, but your internal system feels like it is shutting down, or it is being trapped in a toxic relationship where you keep having the exact same argument over and over again.
Or repeating loops.
The text also points out explicitly that this squeeze often manifests as inexplicable physical ailments, chronic back pain, migraines, stomach issues that no doctor can quite diagnose.
The body taking the hit for the mind.
The body is physically keeping the score of the emotional weight you refuse to drop.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to reframe how we view this discomfort.
Because it feels terrible in the moment.
When you are in the middle of it, when you are dreading your job or your shoulders are knotted with chronic tension, it feels deeply punitive.
It feels like a punishment.
It feels like a punishment, or that you are inherently unlucky. But the sources are adamant, and this aligns perfectly with evolutionary biology, that this squeezing is not a punishment. It is an energetic redirection.
The universe saying, go this way instead.
The system operates on efficiency and growth. If you are stagnating, if you are clinging to a version of yourself that is fundamentally outdated, the environment around you will become increasingly hostile and uncomfortable.
It forces your hand.
It has to, in order to force you to move.
Like a snake that has outgrown its skin. The old skin becomes incredibly restrictive and uncomfortable, and that discomfort is the exact mechanism that forces the snake to shed it.
That is exactly the mechanism. The text makes a profound assertion here. Beneath the exact things we are most terrified to let go of. Beneath that toxic job we won't quit, beneath that painful dynamic we won't leave, lie our greatest entirely undiscovered potentials.
We think we are playing it safe.
We think we are protecting our survival by holding on to the familiar, but we are actually suffocating our own evolution. The system is squeezing you to force you to drop the dead weight.
But dropping that weight requires a willingness to step into the void. You have to be willing to lose the miserable certainty of your current life without knowing what is going to replace it.
That unknown is terrifying to the human brain.
And this idea of stepping into the void makes me think of the physics side of our sources, because when you actually look at what the void or empty space is made of, it completely shatters classical physics.
This is where the bridge between psychological release and physical reality becomes highly technical.
The shift from psychology to quantum mechanics.
The source material's enthusiasm for hard science is completely justified here, particularly regarding the discoveries of the last century regarding the atomic structure.
The realization of the empty atom. We all vaguely know this from high school chemistry, but we rarely stop to consider the philosophical implications.
We just memorize it for a test and move on.
Right. But the atom is the building block of absolutely everything. is the building block of your body, the chair you are sitting on, the phone you are holding.
Every physical object in existence.
But when physicists actually zoom in, they find that it is 99.9% completely empty space. I marvel at this paradox. If you and I and the desks we are sitting at are mostly just empty space, why does the world feel so incredibly solid?
To answer that, we have to look past the classical model of the atom as a tiny, solid billiard ball.
Right, the old textbook drawings are wrong.
The subatomic realm does not operate on the rules of macroscopic physics. In the quantum field, before anything is observed, before any measurement is taken, matter doesn't actually exist in a solid, fixed state.
It's just potential.
It exists purely as a localized probability field, a wave of infinite possibilities.
Now, we know the audience is familiar with the basics here. We all know the classic double-slit experiment.
The observer effect.
Exactly. How the mere introduction of a measuring device collapses the electron's wave function into a particle. The act of looking at the thing changes the behavior of the matter.
Observation fundamentally alters reality at that scale.
But what these sources do is scale that quantum decoherence up to the neurobiological level. And I want to push back on this a little bit because it is very easy to fall into a trap here.
The trap of New Age oversimplification.
Yes. The sources suggest that our personal perspectives, our beliefs, and our emotional filters act as the measuring devices. We are the observers. But surely my bad mood doesn't literally change the physical structure of my kitchen table.
No, it doesn't.
How does this macro-level observation actually work without sounding like magical thinking?
It is a critical distinction to make. No, your bad mood does not alter the atonic structure of a wood or table. The table is already a collapsed reality agreed upon by the macroscopic environment.
Thank goodness, otherwise life would be chaos.
Complete chaos. Where the observer effect applies to our daily lives is in the realm of probability and perception. The quantum field presents a wave of infinite possibilities regarding events, opportunities, and interactions.
The invisible waves of chance.
Your neurological filter, specifically mechanisms like the reticular activating system in the brain, acts as the measuring device that collapses that wave of probability into your perceived and experienced reality.
So what does this all mean? Let's ground this in a real-world scenario. The text uses the example of two different people presented with the exact same career opportunity.
A great practical application.
On paper, the opportunity is identical. The economy is the same. The job description is the same. How does the observer effect apply here mechanically?
Think of the career opportunity as a wave of probability. It contains the potential for massive success, the potential for failure, the potential for a lateral move, and infinite variations in between.
All existing at once.
What's fascinating here is that the first person has a generally unburdened, coherent mindset. Their internal filter, their internal measurement, operates on the baseline assumption that they are competent and the world is full of opportunities.
They expect things to work out.
When their consciousness interacts with this wave of probability, their neurological and energetic state collapses it into a solid reality of success. They physically manifest that reality because their filter tuned into that specific frequency of the wave.
It's like tuning a radio to the right station.
Exactly. They notice the subtle social cues in the interview, they project a physiological state of calm confidence, and they seamlessly claim the role.
And the second person, the one burdened by deep self-doubt.
The second person's filter is fundamentally different. Their baseline assumptions is that they are not enough, the resources are scarce, and that failure is inevitable.
The doom filter.
When they interact with the exact same wave of probability, their internal measuring device is incapable of perceiving the successful outcome. Their filter literally edits out the subtle opportunities.
Their brain hides the path to success from them.
They might completely misread the interviewer's tone, their nervous system will project anxiety, which makes the interviewer subconsciously distrust them, or they might simply delete the email offering the interview because they assume it is a mistake.
Wow.
The quantum field provided a wave of infinite career possibilities, but their internal belief system collapsed it into a solid wall of rejection.
So it isn't that they magically made the job disappear, it's that their biological and energetic filter dictated exactly how they navigated the probability field, making failure the only possible mathematical outcome for them.
Exactly. They are the active architects of their reality, collapsing the wave based entirely on their internal programming.
Which begs the massive question, where does this programming come from? If my beliefs are literally collapsing quantum waves into my daily reality, who programmed my measuring device?
That is the most important question.
The materials introduce this deeply unsettling concept called the inner guard. And I think everyone listening knows exactly what this
Oh,
is.
absolutely.
It is that critical inner voice. The voice that chimes in the second you have a big, expansive idea. You think, I should start my own consulting business. And immediately the inner guard says, you aren't smart enough for that. You are going to fail and look foolish.
The text describes the inner guard as the warden of a subconscious prison.
A prison you don't even know you're in.
You live your life inside an invisible emotional perimeter, and you don't even realize the walls are there because the warden's voice sounds exactly like your own internal monologue.
You think it's just your own logical thoughts.
You think you're just being realistic,
Ugh.
but you're actually operating within a highly restricted cell of probability.
To understand how this prison is built, we have to look at the developmental psychology provided in the sources. We have to examine the neuroscience of childhood development, specifically from birth to about 7 years old.
The most critical window of human development.
Because during this window, the human brain is operating in a vastly different state than it does in adulthood.
The distinction is fundamental. In early childhood, the rational, logical, analytical part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is not fully developed or active.
So they can't rationalize things.
They can't. Young children are operating primarily in lower brainwave states, essentially theta and alpha states, which makes them highly suggestible. They're walking subconscious minds.
They're like little sponges just absorbing the environment.
They cannot reason. They cannot analyze complex situations. Instead, they operate entirely on primitive emotional recording. And for a child, the absolute deepest, most critical biological imperative is maintaining safety and connection with their caregivers.
Their physical survival depends entirely on the giant humans in the house. So maintaining that bond is a matter of life or death to the child's nervous system.
It is the prime directive. And this is where the subtle trauma occurs. I want to be clear here, as the sources note, we are not necessarily talking about massive catastrophic abuse.
Right. It's often much quieter than that.
We are often talking about the subtle, everyday traumas of misattunement. Imagine the baseline state of a healthy child. They are naturally exuberant, they are loud, they have enormous emotions, they demand attention.
They're pure, unedited life force.
Right. And then they encounter the realities of stressed adult caregivers.
The parents who are just trying to pay the mortgage and keep the lights on.
Precisely. Imagine that natural exuberance is repeatedly met with frustration, impatience, or emotional withdrawal from the parents. A child is running around making noise, and a parent who is perhaps deeply stressed about financial issues snaps and yells, "Stop being so much, you are driving me crazy."
Now, as an adult, if someone yells at me because they are stressed about money, my prefrontal cortex analyzes the situation and says, that person is projecting their financial anxiety onto me. This has nothing to do with my inherent worth.
Because you have adult cognitive tools.
But a 5-year-old cannot do that.
A 5-year-old does not have the neural circuitry for that level of abstraction. Instead, the primitive brain processes the interaction purely as a threat to survival.
It's a life or death signal to them.
The logic runs like this. When I am loud and authentic, the person who keeps me alive gets angry and pulls their love away. This means my natural state is dangerous.
That is heartbreaking.
The child internalizes a profound core belief. I am flawed. I'm too much. I'm not lovable as I am.
To maintain that vital, life-saving bond with imperfect caregivers, the child systematically begins to suppress their true self. If being quiet keeps the parent calm, the child learns to shrink.
They adapt to survive the emotional environment.
If being invisible stops the yelling, the child learns to hide. They essentially amputate pieces of their own authenticity to fit into the emotional container their parents can tolerate. And the suppression is exactly what creates that subconscious filter.
It is the exact moment the inner guard is born. The child creates this internal voice to police their own behavior so the parents don't have to.
The guard says, don't speak up, you'll be rejected.
The tragedy, as the materials point out, is that these childhood programming loops do not disappear when we move out of the house. The brain literally physically wired itself around these survival mechanisms.
The hardware was built around that fear.
We carry these invisible filters into adulthood, and they become the measuring device that collapses our quantum reality.
This means that in adulthood, this exact same filter, the one created by a terrified 5-year-old trying to manage their parents' stress, now dictates every single aspect of what we believe we are worthy of.
Every single aspect.
It dictates the financial ceiling we hit. It dictates the quality of the relationships we tolerate. If your childhood filter says, I am only safe when I am small and struggling, your adult observer effect will literally collapse the wave of reality into scenarios where you remain small and struggling.
Because anything else feels like a survival threat.
You will unconsciously reject wealth or healthy love because your nervous system fundamentally associates abundance and visibility with danger.
You are living out the emotional limitations of your caregivers, masking them as your own adult reality. The inner guard is just a trauma response masquerading as your personality.
So we have the filter. We understand the psychology of the measuring device. But how does this internal state actually broadcast its signal out into the physical world?
This is a great pivot in the text.
The source material transitions here from deep psychology back into the mechanics of manifestation, drawing heavily from ancient mystical teachings. And they posit something that challenges our modern hyper-rational worldview, that the heart, our physical emotional center, is the true engine of creation.
This is a remarkable synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern biophysics. In our current paradigm, we tend to think that creation and change begin entirely in the brain.
The whole mind over matter concept.
We think if we just think the right thoughts or repeat positive affirmations, we can hack our reality. But the text argues that an intention, a thought residing purely in the neocortex, is fundamentally weak on its own. It is merely an electrical impulse.
So sitting on my couch repeating, I am confident and successful over and over again while my body is knotted with anxiety is essentially useless.
It is entirely useless. The brain sends the directional signal, but the heart acts as the magnetic amplifier.
The brain is electrical, the heart is magnetic.
We know that the heart possesses an electromagnetic field that is vastly more powerful and expansive than the brain's. When a cognitive intention is combined with an elevated, coherent emotion generated from the heart emotions like profound gratitude, deep joy, or absolute certainty, it becomes a literal creative force.
It reaches out into the field.
The thought provides the vector, but the emotion provides the actual fuel that interacts with the probability field.
I love the analogy of the car here. The brain is the steering wheel, providing the direction, but the heart is the engine. If the engine is off, turning the steering wheel doesn't move the car an inch.
Exactly. If your brain is saying, I want a fulfilling, respectful relationship, but your heart is emanating the baseline frequency of, I am unlovable and terrified of abandonment, the surrounding probability field responds to the heart's massive electromagnetic frequency, not the brain's quiet electrical whisper.
This leads right into the law of assumption explored in the text. The concept is that the universe, the quantum field, interacts with us entirely based on our deepest internal assumptions.
It is not judging you.
It doesn't judge you, it doesn't pity you, and it doesn't grant wishes based on what you verbally ask for. It simply mirrors the frequency of your assumptions.
The perfect mirror.
If you walk around with the deep, heart-centered assumption that life is a brutal struggle and people will always betray you, the universe will essentially say, your assumption is the blueprint, and it will collapse the wave to ensure you only experience struggle and betrayal.
It is an impartial feedback loop. The external environment is constantly mirroring your internal state.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text presents a highly relatable scenario to illustrate this mirror effect, and I want to really dig into this because it can be highly controversial.
It can trigger a lot of defensiveness.
They talk about the mirror of human behavior. Think about a dynamic where you have a boss or maybe a partner who is incredibly polite, respectful, and charming to absolutely everyone else in the room. But toward you, they act like an absolute tyrant.
Everyone has met someone like this.
They dismiss your ideas, they speak to you with a tone of disrespect, they constantly undermine you.
It is a maddening experience.
Yeah.
And the natural, logical instinct is to point the finger entirely outward. We say, my boss is a narcissist, or this person is just toxic.
It's all their fault.
We view ourselves entirely as the innocent victim of their bad behavior. But the sources challenge this paradigm aggressively. This raises an important question. How are you inviting this behavior?
No, wait. I have to stop you there because that sounds extremely reductive. We have to be careful here. Are the sources actually saying it is the victim's fault if a boss is verbally abusive? Because that borders on victim blaming.
I understand the concern.
How does the text reconcile the idea of an external abuser with this internal frequency model?
It is a crucial distinction. The text is absolutely not dealing in the realm of fault or moral blame. It is dealing in the realm of mechanical physics and nervous system communication.
Biology, not morality.
It is not your fault that the boss has cruel tendencies. But we have to look at the mechanics of why those tendencies are activated exclusively in your presence.
Why you are the trigger for that specific behavior.
The text suggests we must examine our internal frequency. If someone is treating you poorly, and only you have to ask yourself, where's the gap in my internal boundaries? Are you operating from a deep-seated need to please others to maintain safety? Do you have an inability to tolerate the discomfort of saying no?
So we are talking about the subconscious signals we project. If I am constantly putting myself second, if I always volunteer for the extra work, if I never speak up when someone takes credit for my project, if I constantly shrink to make others comfortable, I am broadcasting a very specific, coherent signal from my heart's electromagnetic field.
Yes. You are broadcasting the frequency of, I am not important. My needs do not matter. I will abandon myself to keep the peace.
And the argument is that people, particularly those with predatory or domineering tendencies, pick up on that frequency instantly on a subconscious level.
Precisely. Human nervous systems are constantly co-regulating and communicating beneath the level of conscious thought. If your internal state signals a profound lack of self-advocacy, the world will mirror that exact frequency back to you.
That gives them the green light.
The boss, who is perfectly polite to the employee who emanates strong, unshakable boundaries, will unconsciously become a tyrant to the employee who emanates subservience. The boundaryless employee's frequency is literally providing the environmental permission for the tyrant's behavior to manifest.
The external tyrant is simply the physical mirror reflecting your own internal lack of self-respect.
That completely flips the script on how we handle these situations. It means that trying to change the boss's behavior through external manipulation or complaining is ultimately futile.
You can't change the reflection by yelling at the mirror.
To change the reflection in the mirror, you have to change the object casting the reflection. You have to focus entirely on rewriting the subconscious programming that tells your nervous system that you have to be subservient to survive. You have to heal the 5-year-old who learned to shrink.
Which brings us to the nature of healing itself and how it operates across the dimension of time. This is perhaps the most theoretically complex portion of the material.
It truly stretches the mind.
The illusion of linear time. This is where the synthesis of advanced theoretical physics and deep mysticism really peaks.
We experience reality linearly. We perceive a past that is fixed and gone, a present that is occurring right now, and a future that is yet to happen.
That's just common sense to us.
But in the broader quantum framework, and indeed in many ancient philosophical models, this linear progression is an illusion constructed by the limitations of human perception. In reality, the past, present, and future are all occurring simultaneously in a state of now.
The block universe theory.
The block universe theory in physics supports this exact idea that all points in time are equally real and exist simultaneously.
I want to break this down because when you grasp what this actually means for personal healing, it is staggering. If time is an illusion and everything is essentially happening in a simultaneous block, this means that if you sit down today and you finally do the deep internal work to heal that root belief of, I'm not enough, that was installed when you were 5 years old, you aren't just making yourself feel better today.
The implications go far beyond present moment symptom relief.
The sources suggest that you are actually retroactively altering the past timeline. But let's ground this in the biology of it. How does that actually work without violating causality?
We can look at this through the lens of memory reconsolidation in neuroscience. For decades, we believed that memories were like files stored in a filing cabinet. You pull a file out, look at it, and put it back unchanged.
Just reading old data.
But neuroscience now knows that every time you recall a deeply emotional memory, that memory becomes biochemically labile. It becomes unstable and malleable.
It opens up for editing.
If, while recalling that painful childhood memory, you introduce a completely new, elevated emotion, say profound self-compassion or empowerment, you literally alter the protein synthesis of that memory in your brain. You rewrite the synaptic weight of the past event.
So the event itself, the parent yelling, still physically occurred in the historical record, but its energetic and biological reality inside your system has been completely fundamentally changed.
Exactly. You have changed the frequency of the past. And because time is a simultaneous construct, by shifting the frequency of the past and the present simultaneously, you inevitably shift the trajectory of your future timeline.
Because the starting coordinates have moved.
You literally jump onto a different parallel track of probability because the root code of your measuring device have been rewritten. The future where you fail because of that trauma no longer exists for you.
This process of jumping timelines, of forcing this evolution, initiates a massive internal war. The text refers to this as the conflict between the soul's evolution and the ego's comfort.
It is the fundamental friction of human existence. On one side, you have the deeper essence of who you are, what the mystical sources call the soul. The soul's primary directive is expansion.
It wants to grow.
It incarnated to learn, to experience profound joy, to break boundaries, and to evolve into higher states of coherence.
But on the other side, we have the biological reality of the physical body and the construct of the ego.
The ego is essentially the psychological immune system. Its primary function is survival, and to the primitive mechanisms of the ego, survival equals predictability.
The known is safe, even if it hurts.
The ego desperately wants to stay in the comfort zone, regardless of how painful that zone might be, because the known is always perceived as safer than the unknown. The brain is essentially a predictive processing machine. It wants to conserve energy by predicting what will happen next.
And shifting timelines destroys those predictions.
Stepping into a new timeline requires massive amounts of neurological energy and entails unpredictability, which the ego interprets as a mortal threat.
This perfectly explains why people stay in deeply unfulfilling situations for decades. The deeper part of them is screaming, "We need to expand, this job is crushing our spirit," but the ego is slamming on the brakes saying, "Yes, but we know exactly how to survive this misery. We understand the rules of this pain. If we quit, we enter the unknown, and the unknown equals death."
The ego will literally choose predictable misery over unpredictable joy every single time.
And here is where the text issues a stark warning. The universe is biased toward evolution. If your deeper essence is calling for expansion, and you stubbornly refuse to leave your comfort zone out of fear, the energy of that suppressed expansion does not just dissipate.
It has to go somewhere.
It builds up within your system. Eventually, the environment will forcefully push you out of the nest.
The universe's squeeze becomes a crushing grip.
Yes. The sources note that this forced eviction often manifests as massive, destabilizing life crises. It might look like a sudden, severe health crisis that entirely removes your ability to continue working yourself into the ground.
The body just says, no more.
It could be sudden financial ruin that shatters your false sense of security, or it can be a massive relational betrayal that forces you to finally confront your lack of boundaries.
From the ego's perspective, these events are catastrophic disasters.
The end of the world.
But from the perspective of systemic evolution, they are highly efficient, dramatic rescue missions designed to shatter the rigid shell of the comfort zone and force you into the necessary unknown.
It's the ultimate tough love. If you refuse to walk through the door of change willingly, the system will set the room on fire, so you have no choice but to jump out the window.
That is exactly the dynamic, which is why the sources advocate so strongly for taking conscious, authentic action to initiate change yourself. You want to walk through the door, not be thrown out the window.
And regarding authentic action, there is a fascinating, highly relevant observation in the materials about how we navigate our current technological era. We live in a time absolutely dominated by synthetic creation, artificial intelligence.
It is everywhere now.
You can have an AI draft your emails, write your business plans, and even generate your creative concepts. But the sources note that blindly relying on AI to generate your thoughts actually disconnects you from your own unique frequency.
It creates a dangerous layer of abstraction between your consciousness and the physical reality you were trying to shape.
The text strongly advocates for the physical, tactile act of doing things manually, specifically, the act of writing things down with a physical pen and paper.
The analog approach.
In an increasingly digital, frictionless world, the physical act of writing introduces necessary friction. It slows down your brainwaves, it connects the motor cortex of your brain to the physical environment.
It demands full presence.
It keeps you grounded, organic, and truly connected to your own internal wisdom. It is a way of signaling to the probability field, I am physically present, and I am the active, conscious creator of this timeline.
It is a profound grounding practice. If you are going to navigate these expansive quantum energies, you must remain anchored in your physical vessel. And learning to consciously navigate those energies is the final practical application the sources provide.
Yes, this brings us to the mechanics of the actual internal shift. The materials provide a fascinating visualization framework designed to help a person physically and emotionally cross the threshold into a new reality.
Mhm.
And I want to analyze the mechanics of this framework because it isn't just a simple daydream, it is a highly structured process of conscious reality collapse.
It is a neurological protocol for shifting your observer effect.
The framework suggests starting by actively shifting the nervous system state. It emphasizes slow, regulating breaths. What is the biological necessity of starting the process this way?
You cannot access the quantum field of infinite possibilities if you are in a state of survival.
The body has to feel safe first.
Fast, shallow breathing keeps the nervous system locked in a sympathetic fight-or-flight state. In that state, your brain waves are in high beta, totally focused on the external material world and perceived threats.
Looking out for tigers.
By deliberately slowing the breath, you activate the vagus nerve, which forces the body into the parasympathetic rest and digest state. You are physically signaling to the brain the environment is safe.
Turning off the alarms.
This allows the brain waves to slow down into alpha and theta states, where the subconscious mind becomes accessible and the rigid boundaries of the ego begin to dissolve.
Once that relaxed state is achieved, the framework asks you to bring to mind an impossible, unresolved problem in your life. A financial wall, a chronic health issue, a relational knot you can't untangle.
You bring the density to the surface.
You are supposed to really feel the frustration and the density of that problem, and then the imagery shifts. The text suggests imagining yourself standing in a hallway, and right in front of you is a solid door. Underneath the door, there is a brilliant, warm light emitting from the other side.
The symbolism is powerful.
Let's analyze this specific imagery. Why a hallway and a door?
It taps into universal Jungian archetypes. The hallway represents the transitional space, but also the confined parameters of your current deeply conditioned reality.
It is the subconscious prison we discussed earlier.
The door represents the threshold of conscious choice, and the light underneath signifies the uncollapsed probability field, the unknown reality that exists beyond your current sensory perception.
The framework then asks you to pay very close attention to your physical body as you imagine reaching for the doorknob. It notes that physical sensations during this kind of deep internal visualization are highly symbolic.
The body always speaks.
For instance, if you imagine reaching for the door and you feel a sudden tightness in your chest, or a sharp pain in your shoulders, or a heavy ache in your lower back, what is happening neurologically there?
That somatic resistance is the literal manifestation of the inner guard. It is the ego attempting to stop you from crossing the threshold. The body stores trauma and subconscious beliefs physically.
The tissues hold the issues, as they say.
The text notes specifically that the back and shoulders are often where we energetically carry the heavy burden of ancestral or parental conditioning. That sudden pain is the weight of generational expectations telling you, people from our background don't open doors like that. We stay in the hallway where it is safe and predictable.
Don't get too big for your britches.
The protocol requires you to acknowledge that physical resistance, to understand it as a protective mechanism, but to consciously decide to turn the knob anyway.
And as you mentally push the door open and step over the threshold, you leave the dense energy of the hallway. The framework describes stepping into an infinite, expansive space filled with millions of sparkling, floating lights.
In the language of quantum mechanics, that imagery perfectly represents the superposition of the waveform, the uncollapsed field of infinite possibilities.
Each of those sparkling lights represents a completely new perspective, a parallel reality, a solution that your stressed out, analytical mind simply could not perceive while you were trapped in the lower frequencies of the hallway.
You couldn't see them because you weren't on their frequency.
The protocol instructs you not to force a logical choice, but to allow one of those lights, one of those possibilities, to naturally drift toward you. And then crucially, you are instructed to imagine taking that light and placing it physically into your heart center. Why the heart rather than the mind?
Because, as we established, the heart is the magnetic amplifier. By bringing the symbol of the new possibility into the heart space, you are moving the concept from a purely intellectual idea into an integrated somatic experience.
It's not just a thought anymore, it's a feeling.
You are combining the intention of the new reality with the elevated emotional coherence of the heart. The framework suggests feeling the warmth of that light spreading through your nervous system, physically rewiring the old codes of scarcity and fear.
You are internally repeating the assumption, new possibilities are safe for me, I am worthy of this expansion. You are practicing the exact biological and energetic state required to collapse the new reality into existence. You are changing the frequency of the observer.
It is a profound, structured method for overriding the childhood filter and consciously directing the quantum probability field.
Which brings us to the task of synthesizing the immense terrain we have covered today.
We have journeyed from the microscopic truth of our physical universe, the reality that the atoms comprising everything we know are vast fields of empty space, existing as pure potential until measured by consciousness.
The ultimate blank canvas.
We bridge that physics into developmental psychology, uncovering how the subtle misattunements of our early childhood literally program the neurological measuring device within us.
We looked at the mechanics of the inner guard, that subconscious warden that keeps us locked in a limited loop of repeating the past.
Yes, and we explored the realization that the heart, not just the brain, is the true electromagnetic engine of manifestation. We understand now that the universe is an impartial mirror, constantly reflecting our deepest internal frequencies and boundaries back to us through our circumstances and our relationships.
All connected.
Ultimately, the synthesis of all these diverse sources is a declaration of absolute, undeniable agency. We are not victims of circumstance, blindly battered by external forces. We are the conscious architects of our daily reality, continually collapsing the wave of the universe into physical form based on our internal programming.
It is the ultimate empowerment, but it comes with a heavy responsibility. And that brings me to the final thought for you, the listener. Having this intellectual understanding is fantastic, but knowledge without application is completely sterile.
It's just trivia unless you use it.
You can listen to the deepest analysis in the world, but if you don't change your internal frequency, nothing in your external environment will shift. The work is about having the courage tomorrow morning to actually face that inner guard.
The daily practice.
When the voice in your head tells you to shrink or to accept disrespect to keep the peace, you have to have the conscious awareness to stand tall. You have to actively choose to turn the doorknob, to step out of the familiar, painful hallway and into the terrifying, beautiful room of infinite possibilities.
The rigorous application of the knowledge is the only metric that ultimately matters.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us on this intense and deeply complex dive today. We appreciate your time and your willingness to grapple with these massive, reality-altering concepts.
It was a great discussion.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to carry with you. I want you to really mull this over as you go about the rest of your day.
Let's hear it.
If every single thing in your environment, every opportunity, every interaction, every obstacle, and every moment of joy is fundamentally just a wave of infinite possibilities floating in the quantum field, literally just waiting for your specific internal frequency to give it permission to exist in solid form, what reality are you accidentally commanding into existence right now, just by the way you are breathing?
That's a powerful thought to end on.
Think about it. We'll see you next time.